In this building, I'm better known as Raman Nalini's son. I'm from the United States. I've been here for the past 10 months doing an independent research project. For a lot of you, it might be unclear exactly what that entails. I'm here on a scholarship from the US federal government, the equivalent of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. There are 3 of us currently in Malaysia, and I'm the only one who's doing this project. It's called the Fulbright Scholarship Program, and basically what the motto of the Fulbright program is to sponsor educational opportunities that foster mutual understanding between the United States and countries abroad. So basically opportunities for us to understand our common humanity despite our national differences. So just very quickly, the reason why I got this scholarship is not because I got the best marks or I went to the best college or anything like that. The reason I got this scholarship is because of the story I told in my application. And because all of you are extremely close to my family, I felt you deserve to know exactly why I got this opportunity. They don't want people who have the best marks. They want people who can represent their country abroad. So in my application, I have to tell my personal story as to why I can represent my country in Malaysia. So what I did was I talked about my grandfather, right? And my grandfather's influence is essentially why Brickfields has been swimming in my mind ever since I was a small child. Growing up, my grandfather and my grandmother, who's here today, Mrs. Naidu, this is the Malaysian side, by the way, not the Sri Lankan side. Growing up, they would tell me stories about the Japanese times and the bombings that would happen. And that really influenced me because a lot of the discussion was about how people became disabled. They lost their vision and everything like that. And then coming to fine arts all the time, I would see blind people walking around. A lot more before than there are now. But that really got me interested because growing up, we all think, disabled people cannot participate in society. But here, you see blind people, every step forward they take, they make me question, who actually is disabled in our society, right? We all could be considered disabled. So that, plus remembering the day that my grandfather lost his vision, he called my mother and he was crying, and seeing her face, right, her response. All of these things really moved me, and my first year of college, I decided that this is what I wanted to do after I graduate, and this is how I'm going to do it. My grandfather spent his life savings sending his children to the United States to get an education, assuming that they would be coming back. The difficulties that my grandmother has had to go through taking care of my grandfather with essentially no family around, I figured it was only fitting for the United States to pay for one of his sons to come back to where he comes from. So this is where that energy comes from, right, with this project. And it's very much interlinked with the blind community. Also, I just quickly want to mention that during my experience here, there has been someone who has always been there for me, always taken care of me, and she heard that a few people were interested in hearing me talk about this topic, but nothing really was developing with it, and she took it upon herself to organize it. And everybody here, at least my age, calls her Auntie CB, but I call her Periama, and it's for a very good reason. She's been like a mother to me for the past 10 months, so this is all because of her. So thank you for that. Oh, applause already, okay, cool. So what I'm going to do is basically present about the neighborhood of Brickfields in its current state. Now, it's very difficult some of the conversations I've heard recently, people might be under the impression that I'm giving a general survey, like these are the people who make up this community. But it's very difficult to do that as one foreign 22-year-old American boy in a community that numbers between 10 to 15,000 people. What I can do, and what I hope to do, is inspire you, right? And you don't inspire through numbers or figures as much as you inspire through stories. So a lot of the research I'm engaging with and trying to do, it's quite difficult to understand because it's a field that people I imagine most of you, other than Muthukumaran, really understands it because it's urban design, architecture, planning, mixed with social science. So what I want to do is, as a Shiva family, or, a member of Shiva family, hopefully inspire you to work through fine arts to engage further with this community that is a neighborhood that is leaving us very quickly, and a community that we need to preserve, in my opinion. So the way I'm going to talk about this is, first I'm going to put it into context. It's a very local topic, but I want to make it about a global issue, right? I want to show you that this neighborhood, which might sound crazy at first, but this neighborhood, in my opinion, has global significance. It can teach us something about cities all over the world. And that's something that we have a responsibility to protect. So first I'm going to talk about cities in general, and then I'll talk about Brickfields and how Brickfields teaches us about cities, and how we can design them, how we govern them, how we make them more inclusive. And then I'll talk about the present status of Brickfields, how Brickfields is changing, okay, and the problems and challenges that come with it. And then I'll talk about the importance of preserving it. And then finally, I want to open it up for discussion, okay? I don't like talking at people, I don't like lectures, honestly, I don't like presentations. Throughout the course of this, please feel free to bring up a topic, raise your hand. You don't even have to raise your hand. If you have any questions, opinions, concerns, you want to argue about something, please feel free to do so. And also, this is not going to be a very happy story, okay? A lot of things I'm leaving out of this presentation because I have a short amount of time, and already I think like 10 minutes have passed. But a lot of this stuff, keeps me up at night. It's really difficult to handle, So hopefully the urgency of this really rings throughout the presentation. Okay, so first about cities, right? We live in an era, okay, of human history that has never been experienced before. And that moment is when more people now live in cities than live outside of cities, okay? And that number is expected to increase at an extremely rapid rate, right? Pretty soon, 5 in 7 people will be living in cities, right? In 15 years, you can see the figure, 5 billion people. Right now we have a population of 7 billion. In 15 years, we'll have a population, 16 years technically. We're estimated to have a population of 8.5 billion people. 5 billion people are going to be living in cities. By 2050, you can see the figure again, 6.3 billion people out of 9.6. That's slightly over 2/3 of the human population will be living in crowded, congested cities, right? Now, 60% of these urban environments have not been built yet to accommodate for the population. And most importantly, most of this is going to be concentrated in Asia, right? So Malaysia, being a relatively stable country geopolitically, economically, socially, whatever, or at least so the government says, especially compared to the other countries surrounding us, the Philippines, India, Pakistan, which is basically a failed state, Sri Lanka. Malaysia is relatively stable, but what that means is there's going to be an influx of populations from countries outside of this country. And also, most importantly, urbanization, the growth of cities is going to happen mainly among the poor, okay, and that includes Malaysia. If you look at the previous great migration in this country, it was poor estate workers who came to the cities after losing everything. That's going to continue. And by 2050, my lifetime, 1/3 of humanity will be living in slums, okay? So this is really, really serious stuff. 1 in 3 people will be living in slum-like conditions in my lifetime, right? By 2050, okay? Now, to put that in terms of KL, the growth of KL has tripled in the past 30 years, which is absolutely unimaginable, or it was unimaginable maybe 50 years ago. It took 300 years for Europe to urbanize as much as KL did in 30 years, right? So that's the world that we're about to live in. That's the world we already live in. So this circle is a region that I'm very interested in as far as, I don't know, a researcher or whatever goes. Can anyone venture a guess as to why? The circle here. So India, Southeast Asia, Eastern Pacific. Say what? Huh? Biodiversity. I'm interested in cities.
Highest population percentage in the world.
Yeah, absolutely correct. You can go to the next slide. There are more people living inside the circle than outside the circle, right? Now the center of this circle is our beautiful country right here, okay? So we will be in the thick of these things. These things will be, will directly affect us, okay? And again, this country is surrounded by a lot of unstable countries as well, and migration, the influx of migration, which is, migrants aren't a problem, but sustainable migration is going to be a huge issue for this country. It already is. India has more poor people than all of Africa combined, right? Pakistan is basically a failed state. Nepal has a huge influx of migrants already. Then you have the Southeast Asian countries. So Malaysia is going to play a huge role, okay? Now, in terms of Malaysia, basically where I'm coming from is Brickfields can already tell us something about how we respond to this reality that we are going to be facing in the next few years. You can go to the next slide. So initially I came here to study the blind community, so that's how I'm going to answer what I just told you. How is Brickfields going to teach us something, right? Basically, when we think of neighborhoods, urban neighborhoods, right, we often think of how they're divided in terms of class, right? Working class neighborhoods, ethnic neighborhoods, like a Chinatown or Little India, religious neighborhoods, right? Or minority neighborhoods. Kampung Baru is, entirely Malay, right? We think in those terms, religion, ethnicity, social class, but never do we have neighborhoods that are culturally or historically defined by another minority that we often forget about, and that's disabled people. So Brickfields is one of the only places in the world where you have a neighborhood that is so profoundly defined by disabled people. They walk the streets, they engage in businesses, they're entrepreneurs, they contribute to the local economy, right? So the question is, how did this happen, and how can we mimic this other places, right? That's essentially what I came here to study. And that transferred onto the other amazing communities, right, that interact with the blind community that are a part of Brickfields history, right? The historic Indian and Ceylonese community, right? The historic Chinese community, working class people, even homeless people, migrant workers. This neighborhood is a migrant neighborhood, right? Yeah, next slide. Okay, so that unique quality that I just told you about, that example of inclusiveness, of diversity that can be celebrated, in very unique and profound ways, that is rapidly leaving Brickfields, right? It's rapidly leaving. Why is that? The onset of urban development. What I mean by that is the modernization of this area, okay, which has been done in very, very problematic ways. Many ways that you all know better than I do because you've been here for much longer than me. Examples, traffic congestion, aggressive spatial changes, a lot of things are changing, right, very, very quickly, and people have had to respond to that. Increased property values and the privatization of public land. Now this is all, to be very frank, the product of the KL Central mega development project, right? So they constructed the train station which centralized transport for pretty much the country and Southeast Asia in many ways, which is a really great thing. But what came with that was also the development of this business district. All of these nice, sexy skyscrapers came up, right? And from that, there's an incentive to take more of Brickfields, so that it can further modernize. Because as soon as you engage in the market, these properties become properties that you can make a lot of money off of, okay? So privatization of public land, that's an example of that would be the police station. We don't have a local police station anymore. The police station that was in Brickfields was a vital part of this community and the city. and now it's gone. They just broke it down, they didn't consult anyone about it, and now it's become privatized land that is planned, they're intending to build into a luxury condominium, right? But the community is making so much noise. Now if you get robbed, right, we talk about crime, right? And we always think it's the thieves, it's all these, gangs and everything like that, but it's also how people at the top view land, right? And how they divide land up. The loss of the police station made it possible for crimes to spike, right? How is a blind person supposed to report to the police station in Old Klang Road when he gets robbed or when he gets sexually abused, right? These things aren't possible anymore. Justice is not possible anymore, right? Congestion is obvious. They made everything one way, and that's only to get in and out of KL Central, right? Yes, you raise your hand? Oh, okay. It's all about getting in and out of KL Central. There's no consideration of the community, or the communities, right? And all of these things lead to the most important point, which is the loss of public participation. What I mean by that is, you have this neighborhood where people have been living for generations. Their sense of meaning, their sense of belonging, who they interact with, that was all defined by the neighborhood, the way the neighborhood was laid out, and the potential for these people to contribute to how the neighborhood can change, right? Now all of that is taken away because there's some company with unnamed individuals who have come and just sort of changed everything according to how they want it to change, right? So there's a sociological term for it called emotional ecology, right? So everything that you draw meaning from is now just taken away from you. And that has a huge psychological toll on you. So, when we talk about things like gangs, right? I've spent a lot of time with the gangs in Brickfields, and the violence has increased, and it's because of these processes. But the gangs have always been here, right? Okay, so see, these are just some examples. It's not clear, it's a lot clearer on my computer, but here it's not. Traffic, you can see people protesting the Deepavali Bazaar. Okay, local businesses cannot really handle when the Deepavali Bazaar comes. They're also joined by blind people who cannot walk freely in their own neighborhood, the neighborhood they've lived in for over half a century. During this time, who decided it, right? It wasn't the neighborhood who decided to make this little India, right? It wasn't the neighborhood who decided where this bazaar is. All of these things are just examples of how this neighborhood is taken from the people who have been the source of its importance, its vitality, and its unique global qualities, right, for generations. One thing I was going to say, I forgot. I'll just bring it up later. So okay, now I've told you sort of the story of Brickfields, what makes Brickfields unique, right? But I haven't really talked about how these unique qualities of Brickfields are important and why they, briefly I've mentioned some things that sound nice, right? Like diversity, OKU or disabled populations are a part of the neighborhood, things that sound nice, but not really exactly why we should value these things, right? Just because they're unique doesn't mean that we should value them necessarily. So now I'm going to talk about why we should value these things. So first, by doing that, I want to pose a question, okay? We live in a time of climate change. We live in a time, climate change, so like in 100 years, if things are not changed, the Klang Valley will be underwater, okay? According to NASA, the National Aeronautics Space Administration in the United States, they're the ones who fly the rocket ships. They're also physical scientists. They've estimated that if we don't change the way in which we're emitting pollution, okay, in 150 years estimated time, the civilization will no longer be able to exist, the human civilization, right? These are really serious problems. Now, most people will be living in cities, right? So let's put these two things together and see what we come up with. So in a time of climate change, and a time where there's food insecurity, diseases are running rampant and everything, here dengue is now a huge problem, right? A question needs to be asked, how can we make cities sustainable, eco-friendly, for example, although sustainable can mean many different things. And how do we make them healthy, right? How can we make residents of cities healthy, right? So how can we make a sustainable city? How can we make a healthy city? Does anyone have any ideas? How we can do that? Sorry, these are really huge questions. I don't mean to put you on the spot, just to get your mind flowing, I guess. And don't worry, I have an answer. At least I hope I have an answer. Nothing? I'll just keep going. Okay. A lot of times people say we need to build more green buildings, right? Have you all heard of that before? Green buildings, right? Low wastewater usage, low carbon emissions, recycled materials, things like that. That would be an example of a type of way of making a sustainable city. Another way, very basic, right? Like Malaysians stop eating more rice. You know what I mean? Our cities would be healthier if all you fat people stopped eating more rice. White rice, right? I come from it from a different angle, okay? And it's an angle that this woman comes from, okay? Her name is Jane Jacobs, and she's probably the most famous person that nobody has ever heard of. She is a lot of the reason why New York City, or the amazing community aspects of New York City, are the way they are. It's because of the risks she took to fight a lot of things that are happening here, a lot of similar things that are happening here. Now, architects, urban planners, designers all know Jane Jacobs. They all generally, at least those with souls, generally consider her sort of a hero, right? And it's because of the way she understands how we are supposed to look at healthy and sustainable cities, what actually defines those things. Now, what she talks about is something that is a little complex to say in a few minutes, right? I mean, you can take classes on her, right? So because you're a Malaysian audience, I thought I'd change the wording a little bit, I suppose, and I call it the Cari Kampung model, okay? We all know what a kampung is like, right? Or we have a general idea, you know? At night, all the aunties will come together and complain about their husbands. You go anywhere, anyone you come across you know, right? When you walk the streets or the pathways, I suppose, in the settlement, you know everyone, right? And it's usually like a lively place, you know, everything is in the open, everyone is interacting with each other, everyone can see each other, okay? Now, health and sustainability should be understood according to the idea that we all should, rather than we all should stop eating so much rice, we all need to understand that we are a part of something bigger than ourselves. And when crisis strikes, when difficult times come, right, we have each other, okay? It's very much what Shiva family is, right? If somebody passes away, if someone is sick, right, everybody responds, you know? People bring food, all of that. Basically that idea, the idea of that, or the idea of the kampung, apply that to cities, okay? KL's gonna be underwater in 100 years. How do we respond to that? At this point, eating less rice isn't really gonna matter in the long run, you know? What matters is that we have each other, you know? That we learn to love each other, that we learn how to relate to one another, to find our common humanity, okay? Yeah, you can go to the next slide. So this is a quote I found from Swami Vivekananda that, if you apply it to cities, I think really, really speaks to what Jane Jacobs is talking about. So this. Can all of you read it? I can read it out loud.
Yes.
Everyone done? Yes. Okay, yeah, all right. So these are just some examples of this, okay? Let's cari kampung in Brickfields. This is the Brickfields wet market, okay? This man sells fish, his family sells vegetables as well. His family makes fun of me because I try and practice my Tamil with them, but my mother tongue is not Tamil, right? He knows me, I know him. This is a one-stop center, okay, sponsored by YMCA along with some other ministries in the area or close to the area. A lot of homeless people come to that one-stop center, but they're not just brought in, taken care of, and then bungkus and take them out, right? They interact with the people who work there, the volunteers, they're all friends. They live back together, they eat together, all of these things. Whenever they're in trouble, they're helped out by these people. I need to go to the hospital. My husband has been detained. I don't know what the charges are. They will put them in the car and take them to where they need to go. It's very much a community style of living. A simple act of kindness, walking a blind person across the road, especially in the hellhole that Brickfields now is, the traffic hellhole. Simple acts like that spark up conversation. It's a meaningful form of interaction. It's not KFC where you pay for your food. It's a meaningful form of engaging with the people who live right outside your door. And this happens every Saturday. I suggest you all to go at one point. It's in the YMCA. Free food for everybody. And CEOs eat with homeless people. And they all know each other. They all have a good time together. They all sing, play music together during this time. They have guitars available, they have microphones available. There is a little preaching going on, which is very problematic too, but a lot of people can see through that, and they don't force it, okay? But the good qualities of it, that's something that makes it quite amazing, is people coming together, volunteers, staff members, community members, just to have a meal. This is a quote from a blind man who sells tissue paper. So we find this in Brickfields, and you all have been in Brickfields for a long time, much longer than me. You've interacted with Brickfields far more than I have. And not too long ago, a lot of the qualities that I just mentioned, the meaningful forms of interaction, the way in which communities form in neighborhoods, that was all very much there in a lot of very, very interesting ways. Right? You had ethnic and religious minorities, racial minorities. You had migrants, okay? You had disabled people. You had working class people, all coming together, right? And interacting. It makes for a really beautiful, diverse soup, and really beautiful things come from that. There's a lot of potential for really beautiful things coming from that. But now you also have a disabled population, right? So that's what makes Jane Jacobs' idea of the kampong very vital and have global significance, right? Is you have a celebration of disability in the same place where you celebrate Hinduism, or the same place you celebrate Christianity, or the same place you celebrate being Chinese, right? But that's all changing because Chinese community is displaced now. It used to be 30% Chinese, 30% Indian. Now it's not. Why? Because the Chinese businesses that were primarily on Jalan Tun Sambantan are now all displaced to make way for Little India, right? So a lot of these amazing things were there. They're still there, right? But how long will they last? I don't think the blind community can last here for more than 20 years because of property values. Blind masseurs can no longer pay the property tax for the massage parlors that they've owned for decades, right? And that's a tragedy. That's a tragedy, Let me go to the next one. Okay, so now what I want to do is basically give a few stories. I've talked about the big picture, right? Now I want to go down to the nitty-gritty, okay? And this is how Jane Jacobs does it. It's the idea of walking the streets. That's it. Just walking the streets. Not any sort of big numbers or flashy graphs or anything like that. Simply walking the streets and looking around, right? And if me as an American with very limited local language capabilities can do this, then all of us can. And I think we all have a responsibility to do so. So what I'll do is start from my house, okay? Because I'm lazy, I guess. And I'm going to walk down Jalan Scott, okay? Then I'll turn here on this little road and go down Padang Belia, and then make a left and come back up Abdul Samad, okay? And then go home. And as I'm walking verbally, not literally, I'll be making some comments, okay, about what I see, okay, the realities of this space, and whether or not there is an element of community. And now I know something that's really on the minds of a lot of Temple of Fine Arts people is safety, right? Berhala is a very dangerous street, oftentimes, okay? And I want to sort of explain how can we see that street and the sources of its danger, I suppose, by comparing it to other streets on this small walk. This is a really, really short walk, right? But it tells a huge story about the landscape, about the neighborhood. What do the buildings tell us? What do the people who interact with these buildings? What stories can they tell us about this place? Okay, so we start here, we go down Jalan Scott. Jalan Scott, now I've walked Brickfields at every time of the day, okay? 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, whatever, all over the place, from Jalan Angseng to up here. This is the street I'm the most scared of, okay? The reason why this street is the scariest is largely because it is privatized land that has removed any possibility of this sort of community interaction that takes place on the street itself, right? You have Scott Central, you have Scott Villa close by, and you have my apartment, right? But there isn't really any public space. There's no public interaction, much like Berhala, right? Now compare that to Tambi Pillai, or compare that to the end of Padang Belia, where all the Malay shops are, okay? People are less willing to commit crimes in those places because there are always eyes on the streets, okay? This is what I mean by community. We live in a country where in the past 10 years, over 800 Malaysian Indians have been killed by the police. We live in a country where every day 5 migrant workers is killed in work, you know? We live in a country where migrants are detained. My own friends have been detained, okay, without charge. They have passports, they have permits, but the police don't care. They want money, cari makan, right? The police are not our friends. Since BC era, Jesus was killed by the police, right? Especially if you're poor, especially if you're poor. So when it comes to safety, right? If one of our girls is in trouble, we're gonna go to Old Klang Road. Wouldn't it have been nice to have a street that was public, you know? What that basically means is nobody's gonna touch you because everybody's watching. It's a simple idea, right? That doesn't happen here. So at night, gangs linger around here. They come from this gang called the 36 gang, 3-6, okay? They spend a lot of time here. They drink until the wee hours of the morning. I saw them on the way here this morning, right? That's what makes things dangerous, when you make a street dead, okay? Now, over here, you can go on the next slide. This is where, do you know what Radhe is? Or Gandhi's? You know Gandhi's restaurant? Across the street from Gandhi's restaurant, there's a restaurant called Radhe's. Next to Radhe's, there's now Chapati Hut. Chapati Hut used to be in the hut, now it's there, okay? Behind that, there's a tiny lorong, okay, really, really small, like an alleyway. And there's a small gate, okay? Yogesh knows what I'm talking about. A small gate that opens up to an even smaller hall. One person can barely walk through, right? Next to that hall is a staircase. That's where this woman sleeps. She sleeps with a bag that she uses as a pillow. Inside the bag are all her belongings, all her money, her IC, all of that. And with her at all times, what she's holding is a knife for protection, okay? She's afraid of 3 things: the police, thieves and rapists, and water coming inside. Because if it rains, the area gets flooded and she can't sleep, right? The irony of her story is all of her brothers and sisters are either very successful in Malacca or they're in Australia, okay? She has a daughter who hasn't seen her for 3 years, right? These are the people you meet on the streets. Her partner, her husband, was the security guard at Scott Central when it was being constructed. He spent 12 hours every day protecting the building that was being constructed. That same building where under that shadow, she sleeps scared every night, holding a knife, praying to God that nobody comes to harm her. There's an irony to that. Her husband was born in Brickfields. He lived in a house where my condominium stands right now. She's lived in Brickfields for 17 years. These are people who have been a part of the community. And the reason why she's homeless now is because her husband was taken by the drug department of the welfare ministry. Okay, it's called ADK, I believe. And eyewitnesses claim that when he was asked why he was being detained, he just got hit in the face and they didn't inform him. According to procedure, you're supposed to show your badge, you're supposed to explain what your charge is. None of that happened. Why? Because he was a poor Tamil man who didn't look the part of what people in KL Central want Brickfields to become, even though he's been a part of the community for so long, his whole life. His name is Shiva. He used to be called Scott Road Shiva, right? Because everybody on Scott Road knew him. Scott Road is no longer his home anymore. Now, the way in which they contribute to the community, right? The way this network I was talking about, Jane Jacobs Network, the way in which they contribute to that is by taking secondhand belongings from Sudor Flats, okay? Everybody in Sudor Flats likes them, so they would leave things in the parking lot for them to take and sell to people who cannot normally afford good clothing, toys for their children, electronic devices like cheap cell phones, things like that. That's what they did. They were essentially recycling in the neighborhood. They were doing a public good, right? For people who can't afford it, and they're recycling materials that would normally be thrown away. I ask any of you to drive past Sudor now. A new developer has taken it, right? Has purchased it, and you look at the environmental disaster that Sudor is now. So yeah, there's the way we understand cities, it's a choreography, it's a movement, how people move and interact with each other. And it's a daily choreography, which also makes it a rhythm. There's a rhythmic cycle to it, right? In the night, she can't sleep. She's afraid that she's going to be harmed, right? In the day, she goes to Sudor and recycles for us. Go next slide. Okay, I'll try and go quicker here now. This is the Blind Gadget Shop. A lot of people think the Malaysian Association for the Blind is the center of the blind community. The blind community came about because of the Malaysian Association for the Blind. They had global standards in their education and training, okay? And even the United States recognized it. The United States sent their blind people to get education and training in a neighborhood that had cow dung and bullock carts, but provided global services, right? To me, that's progress. To me, that's progress. Not these tall buildings that we see now. To me, that's progress, where we can provide global standards of empowering people, making people feel like they can contribute to society, right? Regardless of what our neighborhood looks like. Now all of that has gone away. MAB has been, I'll be very frank right now, please don't get me arrested, but MAB has been charged with a lot of, they've experienced a lot of corruption charges, okay? A lot of money laundering going on, okay? A lot of troubling things are happening. You go there, you won't see any blind people. In fact, blind people protest MAB on a regular basis. Where the center, the heart of the blind community is now, okay, on that map that I just showed you, I'm now down Padang Belia. I'm at next to 7-Eleven, okay, right across from 7-Eleven. There's a Bangladeshi sundry shop next to the liquor store. The center of the blind community now is inside the Bangladeshi sundry shop on this small countertop, okay? The rental for this countertop, which is 13 feet by 5 feet, is 1,000 ringgit a month, right? It's a couple, a pensioner couple, okay, who have their small network of friends and family who donate money to sell goods that MAB should be selling at an affordable price. They're doing it at an affordable price. If a walking cane, a walking stick, the white cane, you know, if that's 24 ringgit asking price, retail price, they'll sell it for 20. And 4 of it will be subsidized through donations, not from any big names, from their friends and family, you know. That's amazing, that's beautiful. That's a service to the community, right? Before I came here a few days back, I came here to talk to them, okay? I don't know if I just mentioned this. He's very close with Dr. Radha as well, from the University Malaya days. They were there together. He was also a faculty member. I went there to talk to them and just tell them I'm doing this presentation. And he started talking to me about Dr. Radha, right? This lady actually coincidentally comes and asks for a wire, right? The wire is very hard to find. They don't think they have it because they don't normally sell it. But the lady of the couple, her name is Rani, found it, luckily. Don't know how, but it was just in one of the boxes, that's it. She said, never mind, just take it. She asked how much, she said, no, just take it, right? That's meaningful interaction. That's understanding who you're talking to. That's appreciating who that person is and the struggles that person goes through. And that's all here in Brickfields. It was a beautiful moment. It was a beautiful moment. Okay, now I'm going to turn back and go up Abdul Samad, right? Go to the next slide. This boy's name is Imran. Imran comes from Sialkot, Pakistan. Sialkot is in the Punjab area, okay? Doesn't know a word of English, right? I don't know very much Urdu, but we come together with broken Hindi. Last night, I was stressing out about this presentation. I was, working on the computer and everything. I go out to quickly get a Maggi Goreng and come back, okay? An example of walking in the streets and everything. He was sitting there and he had been waiting for me for hours because he knows I normally walk that route. And he was having tension because, he calls it tension. He was troubled because his mother back home, he doesn't have a father, his father passed away when he was a young boy. He didn't go to school, he doesn't know the day he was born, he doesn't know his birthday, right? He doesn't know how old he is. His mother needed surgery, but she couldn't afford it, so he was freaking out. So what did he do? He waited for me. I can't even speak to him, And how do we meet? Just on the streets, right? It's about how we keep one another alive to a certain degree. We give each other comfort and dignity, right? That's what a neighborhood is about. He got married at the age of, I don't know when. He thinks he's 19 or 20, okay? So by that judgment, 2 years ago, he got married. Why at such a young age? Because he didn't want to give his mother any more trouble. He has one child already who he hasn't seen for 6 months. 8 months, and he has one child on the way who he knows he's not going to see for 3 years, right? These are the people who build our buildings. These are the people who clean the shit out of our sewers, right? These are the people who sweep our streets, And this is the difficulty that they go through. And these are the people who are pursued by the police for money, right? But this is a place where they feel at home, where they can, at least when the police aren't around, where they can walk the streets and know that they'll find someone who will make them feel at home, even though he's American and can barely speak a language that he can barely speak, right? That's Brickfields. That's Brickfields. Go to the next slide. Okay, so now Temple of Fine Arts, right? Let's talk about how this all relates to Temple of Fine Arts now. The fact that we've been here for a very long time, okay? But I'm doing this presentation, right? How interactive are we with the community, and could we optimize that more? Or can we start the discussion in a productive and meaningful way to be more proactive in this community, to preserve the beauty of this community, right? And now when I speak to you, I'm not speaking to you as a Fulbright researcher. I'm speaking to you as the son of estate workers, right? I'm speaking to you as the son of a Sri Lankan refugee, okay? I'm speaking to you as someone who recognizes the beauty of what Brickfields has to offer to the rest of the world. There's a neighborhood in New York City called Harlem, okay? It's where poor blacks congregated, much like the poor Indians congregated to this neighborhood. It was after the plantations closed there as well. And poor people define music that now we listen to on the radio, right? All the music we listen to on the radio has its roots in Harlem, right? If you do things the right way in a neighborhood, right, that celebrates diversity on a daily basis, on an everyday basis of interaction, beautiful things can come from it. And as an arts institution predominantly of Malaysian Indians and entirely of racial and ethnic minorities, okay, we have something to contribute to a people who have barely been given anything to them, right? Who don't really have much self-worth, okay? Indians are the poorest in this country. Indians are the most discriminated against in many ways in this country, right? These are the people who need the arts, who need that creative outlet, who desperately need to engage with something that reminds them of the history that this government and this country has been denying them for generations now, Can we really condemn a gang member who's trying to sell drugs on the block when his entire life, he's had an alcoholic father because the father has no means of providing for his family and his mother is abused all day? I mean, we have to understand the root cause of these things, our respect for context and history, and proceed in such a manner, right? When somebody's harmed on Berhala, we should pursue the criminal, but don't pursue everybody who falls into the same social categories as the person who committed the crime. I think I know who committed the crime. I know what gang they're affiliated with. I know why they're on Berhala. I know what times they're on Berhala, right? But I'm not going to condemn everyone who fits those categories because I know the struggles that they've gone through. Or at least I'm trying to understand, right? As the son of estate workers, I'm trying to understand. So, 3 things, generally speaking, and sort of like the philosophy of this all goes, that I want to address, right? The guest is God, but how do we understand that, right? The way in which we are conducting our activities, and I'm not criticizing, one policy, okay? This is not a criticism of policy or anything like that. I'm just speaking in general terms, right? Are we possibly doing things that result in the discrimination of who we consider to be guests and who are not guests in this neighborhood, right? And also in the wider realm of things, okay? An example of that, we have an amazing thing here, right, which is the canteen, okay? But everyone who I talk to, okay, don't know about it. People who are hungry, right, and are not fans of charity, right? They want to show the dignity of spending the money that they earn, be it finding secondhand items or digging through trash to get tins that they can recycle for 8 ringgit for 1 kilo. It doesn't matter. The money that they earn, they want to use it to pay for the food that, in my opinion, they deserve, right? They don't really know about the canteen. How could we possibly create opportunities for those who are poor and struggling in this neighborhood to be more aware of the activities that go on here? Activities that I think are really important to the survival of the Malaysian Indian community in general. Know your audience, right? As far as the performing arts go, who are we performing for, right? Is a performance for Barack Obama going to change the fact that over 800 Malaysian Indians have been killed in police custody, right? Is it going to change the fact that Indians oftentimes, poor Indians, don't feel empowered, right? They don't feel like they can contribute to society. Is it going to change the fact that the blind community is being taken from us every day by developers whose names we don't even know about, by politicians and ministers who never come here in the first place? It's not a criticism of performing for Obama. It's not a criticism of contributing to Visit Malaysia 2014 or anything like that. It is simply saying, can we diversify? Can we incorporate our neighborhood into our activities, right? In the arts, a historically Indian community that needs the arts more than anybody else in this country. Can we incorporate them more? Can we think of other devices or processes we can use? And I mean, respect for context and history just relates to those 2 points. So these are some particular ideas that I've come up with as a foreigner who never shows up here, right? These are just some ideas that have swim through my head. But this is the moment that I want to open up the floor for discussion. I'll briefly just mention some of them, okay? A one-stop center, the YMCA does it, okay? Other ministries around here do it. Temples do it in varied capacities, and the ashram also does it. Vivekananda ashram also does it in varied capacities as well. Could we have a discussion about changing the framework of, let's say, the clinic, or even the canteen, or anything. It doesn't even have to be limited to space, just the mindfulness of the opportunity to have a one-stop center where people can come for advice, counseling, right, on these sorts of things. Things are desperately needed. Where a drug addict who comes to the clinic because he has HIV can also get counseling about where he can go for drug rehabilitation, right? Or where somebody who's hungry can go to feed his or herself because that person is aware that this opportunity is here, and that, even more importantly, he or she knows who is feeding that, him or her, right? That sense of community, meaningful interaction. I go here because the people are good to me. I share common ground with them. And also, again, this is also being done in very, very beautiful ways already. How can we add to that? How can we contribute? And that can only happen through dialogue with other organizations, right? Other organizations that have experience doing it for many, many years. So that's just thoughts about like the culinary aspect of it, and then there's also the performing arts aspect of it, okay? I understand that we have extremely low fees for the standard of education that we provide in the arts. But the general vibe I get is that people here, the poor especially, don't really feel like it's a place that they can come to freely, right? Oftentimes they don't really know what Temple of Fine Arts is about, which is really unfortunate given our very long history in this area, right? So the act of performing, how can we do that in a way that, again, makes people feel good when this shitstorm is upon us, when the police are after us, when the standard of living is getting poorer, the cost of living is increasing, where people are racist towards others who are suffering so much. How can the arts provide a tool in which people can finally feel good about themselves again, right? Participatory performances. Not only just perform for people, but ask them to perform with us too. There's so many baskers on the streets, right? Who are we to judge, who's the better artist? You know what I mean? This is a chance for everyone to get involved, which is much more powerful, much more inclusive. Do this publicly, on the streets. We did it for DT, we did flash mobs. Why don't we do it in Jalan Angseng where all the migrants live? Wouldn't that be nice? Sri Lankan refugees walk outside the house, no electricity inside the house, trying to escape the heat, and there's a performance, a performance that they can identify with, a performance for them. It's an idea. I don't know if it'll necessarily work, but it's just an idea, just to get people thinking. The whole point of this is hopefully to open up the discussion so that meaningful things can happen. That's why I'm here. Community-based performances, incorporating Brickfields' history, culture, and all of that. The Malaysian Indian experience, right? Not just the passage through India, but what about us? There are almost 2 million of us. We have a story to tell, right? This place is a part of that story. How can we incorporate others into that wider narrative? It's a story that's not really known by many people, but it's a very, very beautiful story. A similar story resulted in the Harlem Renaissance. It resulted in jazz music and blues music, rock music. All of that came from a similar story. Neighborhoods, communities and neighborhoods coming together. Why can't we take pride in that, right? And be inclusive, right? A lot of people feel like it's not a building that you can freely enter. It's not a place that you can interact with and engage with, especially the people among us who are suffering the most. So ultimately the point is just to find ways in which we can all come together more, where we can all learn to understand each other more, where we can learn to hug each other, get over our differences, not call each other kaling or karat or, natikaran and all of that. Get over that, move beyond that. That's what's important here. Next slide. And it's especially important in these terms, right? The world is becoming bigger, there are more crises developing, and we're right in the center of this circle. And Brickfields is in the center of this city. It's the oldest neighborhood in this city. Okay. We can change things on a global scale if we just do it right. And what that means is just taking a step outside and talking to someone who you wouldn't normally talk to. That's about it. Thanks. And now, yeah, I'd like to open it up for discussion. I don't want to
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Okay, since it's a forum, since he touched on a few points, Kartik touched on a few points of our interaction with the community. I just want to give information because I think we're doing a few things, but maybe not even all of us know about it. On the one hand, Temple of Fine Arts as an institution has interacted with Wisma Harapan. You would have seen it in the map.
Yeah,
Wisma Harapan is just down the road. Anybody doesn't know where Wisma Harapan is? You all know. I think when you come from YMCA to here, you pass by it on your right. Wisma Harapan is for a place, a daycare center for the mentally challenged. They have about 100 day participants with students of different ages. In fact, they even have some babies, but otherwise 5 years to 40, 45 years old. What TFA did is, some years ago, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, they made a request. They wanted TFA to go and teach music and dance there. Then after some requests, TFA agreed and did. For some years they're teaching dance. I don't know whether that's going on right now, but music is being taught once a week. The community part about this is they respond, they have different degrees of mental condition. Of course, the very severe ones go to Tanjung Rambutan at some point. That means they're very severe. But these are from the slow learner category to the slightly disabled category, but they to some extent can interact. But one thing very characteristic about them is they respond very well to music and dance. I think when we had our fun fair, not DT, but fun fair, the earlier one, they came and performed. The event where they had a stage in the front of Jalan Berhala, the road, they performed. So they respond very well to music and dance. And on the days that TFA teaches music and dance, attendance is full. The nature of these people is sometimes they'll wake up and tell their parents, I don't want to go to school today. But on that days where this is not, you get full attendance, so they respond well. So this is one way TFA has interacted with one institution. This is Wisma Harapan. On another scale, whenever they have their get-togethers, they have the Students' Day, Teachers' Day, whatever, they ring up and ask us, and we will give them some food for free. Whatever we do with Wisma Harapan is done FOC. We have a very good relationship. I think I don't know if you know the principal there, a very spiritual person herself, and she leads a team of teachers. I think even one or two members that we know, you know that Geeta Pottu's mother, she was a staff of Wisma Harapan in those days. Now she's retired. So like that, we know a few of them, and so that's one interaction. The other interaction is in a limited way with the YWCA. We interacted a little bit because at one time YWCA was coordinating the activities of the deaf and the I don't know what's the term used for it in the West. We used to say deaf and dumb. Still the same term. Nowadays terminologies change. YMCA was about 5-10 years ago. So I've been there myself and interacted with them because for a reason. But now I'm told no more. Again, things change. Yeah. As you say, MAB, things change. So now I know the Buddhist temple to some extent is a center for them. What we did, other than just Temple of Fine Arts trying to help, and Anlakshmi also trying to help in food and other areas with this, we also provided employment for some of them. 2 from Wisma Harapan, 1 from the deaf and the 2 people from the deaf and the dumb. There's a tall boy in the riverside. He is one of them. And there's a lady inside the kitchen in Anlakshmi. She has been with us for many years, but I think you all may not have seen her because she's all the time in the kitchen. Whereas this tall boy, he's in the riverside, so you get to see him. So like hugs every time I see him. Yeah, and his mother is profusely thankful to us for having given him a job. It's a long history of talking about these individual things, but in general, the little bit interaction both TFA and Anlakshmi have done with the community is this. We have provided employment for 4 people, EPF, so this thing, and the government ruling is if you give them a job, they come under the category of kurang upaya. If you give them a job and they prove they've got a job, the government will subsidize and give them 300 ringgit. Why? Because the government knows many of them can't work a full working day or a full working week because of their condition, so they may not be able to earn that very well because the performance is only not full. So what the government does is just to encourage them to go to work, gives them a bit of money to top up their thing. Okay, so they have to prove that they are working. So this is the little ways in which we do. We also get quite a few, Anlakshmi gets quite a few requests from various organizations at various times of the year. For example, one event, usually around December, there's a company that invites the children from about 20 or 30 orphanages. They will book Desa Water Park for that whole day, and they'll bring about 200-300 of these children there, give them a good time for the whole day. Then they will come and ask us, can you give them some food or snacks, or when you go and swim, you want to munch muruku and this and that. So whatever we can, we will do and send, all for free. I mean, in all these instances, there's no asking for anything. It's just giving whatever we can. So like that, on various occasions, Anlakshmi has done this little interaction. There's one event coming up. I think the youngsters are going to help us out in October 11th. A group called the United Voice. They are people who work with the slow learners. They have what they call a sheltered workshop, and they try and give them a job to make souvenirs, artifacts and all, and sell it. And then they earn something out of it. So they are raising funds and they've asked us to put up a stall. I know youngsters, you all are going, right? October 11th. We told the youngsters, Anlakshmi will provide all the materials, but you guys go and make the dosa and the vada and whatever you can, come and learn to make it, and then you make and serve it and give it all for free, so that whatever they earn from that stall that day is goes towards this. And we also told United Voice, if any of them are looking for a job, come and talk to us, the child and the parents. We talk to all of them, and if it will work, then we will try and give them a job for 1 or 2 people. These are, I'm sure there are many more, I don't remember, but some interaction with the local community. We have not been able to interact with the blind maybe we have not tried. The only sad story I can tell you in Johor Bahru was when some blind dancers came. They came to Malaysia on 2 occasions. One was in the 1990s when TFA and Swami organized something in Civic Center for them to perform. But more recently, about I think 2 years ago, they came. But that particular weekend. Okay, but about 2 years ago, another group from India, Bangalore, came here. That particular weekend, KL had some events, so they couldn't host them. But we hosted them in Johor Bahru. So what we did before they arrived is, there is a blind organization, there's an organization for blind in Johor Bahru. It was set up by the British called Princess Elizabeth School. So we thought, okay, we will go there and invite them, because they used to have a band. They're very into music. They used to have a band, so we said we'll invite this band to come and perform, so that we can tell the world that even our local children in Johor Bahru can also perform this. But very sadly, when we went to this school, I grew up in that neighborhood. When we went there, the government has taken over that, changed the name from Princess Elizabeth to whatever. They sent all the non-Malay blind boys and girls to don't know where. They only had Malay boys and girls blind, changed it to an Islamic thing. No music and dance is taught there. And then they said they cannot participate. They don't learn music or dance or anything. And then we told the principal, okay, never mind. At least if they can't, can you all come and see what blind people can do? But none of them turned up for the event, the show that was put up by this group. But anyway, that's part of the things that happen in this country. But somehow in KL, so far we have not interacted with the blind. Maybe we should start. Maybe your appeal to all of us is to go and interact. You need time. And that time has to be during, to a good extent, part of it has to be during the working hours, because if you go to the office, you need to meet the people or the admin people, you need to talk. So it means taking a little bit of time off from whatever we're doing and going and spending the time and trying to see what we can do. One of the other things Unlakshmi did is, Wisma Harapan has a sheltered workshop. What they do is, they get jobs where their people can do. Example, Star Publications sends magazines out. Up to now it's in print, it's becoming digital very soon. So they will send the magazines with the covers to them, and all these children or adults will sit around and they will insert the magazine in the cover as a task, as a work, as a job. And Star Publications will pay Wisma Harapan so that their meals are provided, because meals are provided for free to them, lunch and all that. So like that, it's a sheltered workshop, and they kind of earn they do some work that is part of the daily activities of the day-to-day work. So these are the little interactions, but I think what Kartik is trying to ask all of us is whether we can do a little bit more. Yes, we have a place of eat and pay as you wish, but it is not free, because I think some of them need food maybe for free. I don't know. They can't afford to pay. I don't have any answers, but I just wanted to tell us what we are doing, or what we have done, the little we have done in the last say 10 years, and of course the clinic is there, everybody knows that's free, and that is really a community service where anybody, be it a foreigner, be it a local, rich, poor, anybody can get attention, and I think that's an excellent service. 2 days ago, when we were going down to see Kartika Sivam in the van, Kat happened to be sitting next to me, and Kat made since you brought up this point, Kat made one statement: can we, at the clinic in the evenings, have a little music? Music means our students go there just for some time, so that the patients are coming, they're waiting to see the doctor. We come and we play something, whatever, sing a bit, do a thing, and as an offering and as a thing to liven up that place, and as an offering to the patients who are waiting to see the doctor. So he came up with that idea. He said we can be a bit more participative with the community. Okay.
Since Kartik has worked closely with the Blind Association here,
Yeah.
maybe before he goes, he can put us on to somebody in charge, and you can later on communicate with the SME at the time. You know what I mean? Somebody who has worked closely with them.
Yeah.
If he set us on to them, then he can follow up later.
Sure.
Maybe you should do
We can try, but then I think you made a statement that there's something happening there at the
Right, the
moment.
association, I'm linked with the association officially, but I think the association is a very disgusting establishment at this point in time, to be frank. But Dr. Radha's friend, right? The shop, the small shop, okay, with the kuti counter, right? That's where all the blind people go. You find more blind people in that cramped space than the entire beautiful building that is the Malaysian Association for the Blind. They're the ones who need help. 1,000 ringgit rent for pensioners is really difficult to do.
Opposite
What? Yeah, opposite 7-Eleven, directly opposite 7-Eleven. Yeah.
Maybe you can introduce us.
Absolutely.
Maybe
Absolutely.
as a
Yeah.
group we can do something in that.
Absolutely.
maybe
And
through them.
just a quick comment. Uncle Sivan said the Wisma Harapan thing is a small thing. I think it's a huge thing, right? I think that's phenomenal. And he won't take credit for this, but he was sort of the inspiration for getting that moving, And that just shows the influence that one person can have in doing something that makes the world of difference for people. And as far as community service goes, I was talking primarily about Brickfields and the preservation of Brickfields and people suffering here, and that speaks to that very, very profoundly. It's a really, really cool thing that's sustained, right? People, their families have been touched by this, have been affected in very, very profound ways by this, And it's possible in so many different ways just by doing a little bit, right? Like the canteen. A lot of these people do like to pay, right? Just pass out flyers. Go to Ang Sang one day and just throw flyers on your doors. You don't have to go to an office and talk to people. Just let them know. It opens up it opens up fine arts to people who don't know anything about fine arts. Just these little things, right?
And I notice that blind people don't beg or something. They will sell the
Yeah, they sell some.
the Kleenex and things like that. You know, they don't actually.
Just to let you all know, since you brought up this point, talk to Shamini. Shamini has gone there, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. Every day on a Thursday she goes to teach music for an hour. Teach means you don't teach, you play with them. You play the piano and they sing and they have a jolly good time. She has had tremendous experiences. Tremendous. I think beyond, sometimes when she tells me things, it's just beyond, you know. So, okay, this is when you interact sincerely and serve sincerely, the experience is just astounding. Okay, that's one. Okay, the other interactions we have had is with YWCA. YWCA on the one hand, and Montfort Boys Town. Now it's Montfort Boys and Girls. We have interacted with them by providing opportunities for the students to come here for training. If you go to Anlakshmi now, you'll see 4 girls. These 4 girls are under training. For example, YWCA, we asked them, they have 31 students in the catering section who are eligible for training for the second half of every year. So we said, okay, we have space for 4, they can come. And they told us the conditions, what we have to pay them, food, all that we complied, and then fine, they've come. So then I said, what about the other 27? They said, no opportunity for placement for training. So I said, oh my God, we didn't know this. I mean, if we knew, we can connect them with other people. So they're here for training. At the end of the year, they graduate, and then they'll be looking for jobs. You know, but so we interact by providing that, and also with the Montfort Boys and Girls, we have had cooking demonstrations there, because they have 2 sections. One is the hospitality section, and one is the catering section, baking and pastry section. So they're in a combined way. We have organized cooking demonstrations there, and also provided opportunities for them to train here. And Punita is one example of a Montfort graduate who has now worked with us for many years. You know, but I think these are very humble and very little interaction. We could do more. As I said, the clinic is fantastic. I think we're doing really great work. But as Kartik is suggesting, if more of us can go out and interact in a nice way, there's a possibility to do a little bit more. Just needs a few more of us to do that. Thanks.
But I think what Kartik said, like for example, the getting pay exhibition, it's there, but I think people are not aware of it.
Right, so just simple acts of increasing awareness, right? So like the clinic, for example, UNHCR knows about the clinic, Tenaga Nita, I think, knows about the clinic, and they tell all of their clients, right? There's a huge migrant population here and like homeless population that doesn't know about it. So just passing out flyers or like notifying YMCA about it, for example, that can open up doors for people in this immediate area that could use that help as well.
Because actually, clinic now is more foreigners and refugees than the locals.
There was one occasion, there was one group who were trying to, their aim is nobody must go to sleep hungry. It's a Buddhist group somewhere in town. So they came to us one day and said, look, at 7 o'clock at night, whatever food you have left, can you pack and give it to us? We said, fine, we'll give it to you. But they had a problem because they also are a loosely knit team of volunteers. Sometimes they won't come and pick up the food, and then if they're overnight, they'll come back the next day. You know, it was very perfect. We could pack and give it because these people whom they give the food to only eat around midnight. They will go and roam around the city, scavenge food in the dustbins, everything. Then each one of them has got a comfort place to sleep, and some of them are somewhere in the Brickfields area. So apparently about 11:30 midnight. Wherever they've gone, they will come under the bridge, in the bus stop, the taxi stand. Each one has got his favorite spot or her favorite spot, and they'll go to sleep. So these people, what they do is they pack the food and give it to them, and anything they will eat. They're not picky and choosy.
Yeah.
The stomach is so hungry, a pack of food is there, I just eat it. You know. So we tried that, but I think they dropped the baton somewhere, and they are also one of the soup kitchens in Bukit Bintang, which is now the focus of the government.
Yeah.
But we maybe can restart it and try and do something. Yes, yes. Okay. All right.
Kartik, just a question regarding, I mean, you're mentioning about the, your current project. What was, I mean, because I don't know, I mean, as you said, I only know you as Ram and Nandris, and as you said, like everyone else. What is your background? I mean, did you do social studies or?
Yeah,
You did
I
social?
did. I studied 3 subjects in college. I studied biology, anthropology, which is social science, and philosophy. And now I'm going back for a Master of Science in Urban Design in New York City.
This is part of your course, so.
No, it was just my own avasara. I wanted to come here and do this. I'm younger than people in my year, so when I graduated I was younger than everyone, so I thought I'd take a year and actually learn about where I come from rather than go gallivanting learning what other people have to tell me.
So where do you get all your, I mean, like your facts and figures? I mean, like you mentioned quite a bit of statistics just now about, like.
All the statistics I mentioned in this presentation
Yeah.
are from the United Nations, different bodies of the United Nations, UNDP, UN Development Program, WHO, World Health Organization, UN Habitat, UN Housing Settlements. Those are the facts and figures that I gave. As far as the migrant worker thing, 5 migrant workers every day, that's from Tenaga Nita. Irene Fernandez, the big migrant activist organization in Malaysia. Irene Fernandez was in the papers recently. She passed away. She was featured. I got this information from an interview that she did on Al Jazeera, and she showed the facts, like gave in detail, how the facts were calculated and everything. The police thing, Indians being killed, that comes from Human Rights Watch. Human Rights Watch wrote a 112-page report about police murderers in custody for people who were not charged with anything. So the number I gave you are only murders, okay? It's not the people who were tortured or anything like that. It's just murders. So yeah, it's UN, the Tenaga Nita, and Human Rights Watch.
And of course, you went, to the man on the street, spoke to the lady. And
Yeah, direct testimony.
Direct.
The woman whose husband was detained, I went to Xinjiang and bailed him out the first time. I did that personally. I was there with the inspecting officer. He gave one story, right? So that witnesses could not pin him for taking the bribe, okay? And under the table, I passed him the money. And that's how we got him out the first time. That man was detained 3 times in 2 months. Soon after my grandfather passed away, actually. 3 times in 2 months, no charge. They just wanted money. Right, so it's a mixture. It's facts and figures, local, global, as well as direct testimony from people who I spent a lot of time with, I guess.
We had a little bit of first-hand experience when this particular deck was being built. The contractor had got Indonesian workers, as Kartik mentioned. They have their passport intact, they have their work permit intact, they're legal. But when they finish work at 6:30 or 7 or 7:30, they won't go home. They will wait here till 8:30 or 9 because the police are just waiting around the corner just to extort money from them because everything is legal. They've got all the paperwork. They are just wanting to extort money. So that is the experience that the foreign workers have about our police force. Yeah.
So when it talks about helping, when it talks about involving ourselves with the people who make up this neighborhood, right? That's a perfect example about how this is not just about charity. This is justice. This is an issue of justice, right? And we hold a collective responsibility because these are people who share our streets and provide services for us.
But then irrespective of how vocal we are, it's us against authority, isn't it? At the
Of
end.
course, that's why we should look out for each other. We should stop saying this foreign worker, get out of here, you're dirty and you smell bad. It should be about how we need to come together because the authorities, again, my ancestors were estate workers. The story of the estate worker is basically that everything you have can be taken away from you just like that, As soon as people decide that for you, then you're screwed. The British decide that, then the local government destroyed a lot of the estates, made them into palm oil plantations and things like that. it can all be taken away from you. So who do we share that common risky life that we exist in? It's these people who have been through the mill, who know A to Z, you know, who came here with nothing but strive to still hold on to some dignity, right? These are the people who we should share with, who we should perform with and for, who we should eat with and feed. That's generally what I'm trying to say. Yeah, unless anybody else wants to say.
His sister, Kanya, once brought up among the youth, and I think we brought it up with Uncle Sivan and Uncle Mohan about food wastage, you know, in within Annalakshmi. There's a lot of food that is being wasted, and you know, and there was I saw in social media where, I'm not sure which country, Venezuela or somewhere in South America, where they have a public fridge, and it's located in a very prime area, and any food is just packed, from anybody in the community, it's just packed and left in the fridge. So anybody can get access to that fridge, open it up, take the food and go and eat. I don't know whether we can do that, but something along those lines where Annalakshmi doesn't waste food. At the same time, we also can just give it out. I think as part of putting up banners and giving flyers to everyone about the pay as you wish, I think we can also say that we are also giving out free food or something at a certain time, at a certain point. And it's just creating awareness, I think. I don't know, I think the youth, we can, or at least I can help, we can talk with Annalakshmi or something, we can come and volunteer and come and do.
Definitely every night we throw some food, definitely. So if we can then organize that, and either outside our premises or whatever, just leave it there, anybody can come pick up and go away. Just create the awareness.
We can tell other people giving free food too, like the Surau gives kanji every Wednesday, right, at 5:30. The YMCA does it every Saturday. The Methodist Church gives out money, food, hands across Brickfields. So it can be like a central place for everybody to give the leftovers they have, you know, that would be really cool.
So it can be organized. We can do this.
Number of the newspapers that are giving away food and all that is I mean,
Okay, there's a temporary situation right now, but that is they want to.
what kitchen is it?
Soup kitchen. That is at this moment. It can be done, Kartik. We can provide the food, we can pack it, but we have to create the awareness and
Go around.
and then where to put it and how to do it.
Global